Okay, hi, I'm Ruby, and today I want to share my top 5 books that I read in 2020. Here we go. Am I focused? It's not quite the end of the year, but I'm doing this now anyway. I've read 88 books so far in 2020. I'm hoping to finish 2 more by the end of the year, but I don't think either of those are going to be a favorite. So this feels safe to do now. I tried to put these in order and I could not, and I will not. So in no particular order, here are my top 5 books from 2020. First up is The Library Book by Susan Orlean. This is a book I listened to with my mom and we both had such a good time. We were totally we were bewitched. And then I actually became obsessed with librarians. I started doing all this research into what exactly I have to do to become a librarian, and I started having a lot of ideas about whether or not being a librarian is actually the highest calling in the land. And also whether it's my calling. What is it about? The book is centrally about a huge, devastating fire that took place in the 80s at the Central Public Library in Los Angeles. And it explains what happened, like how it happened, who they think might have done it, and like also a lot about like the potential arsonist and like his background, and then you kind of get into like Hollywood in the 80s. But in addition to all of that, there's also all of these extra storylines and explorations of libraries everywhere, and like the beginnings of libraries and like historical libraries. And the only thing that this book did not explain to me about libraries is the Dewey Decimal System. Literally every other facet of library-ness I now know about. And it was a very compelling read. And if you're at all interested in libraries, or if you like books, anybody who likes books should read this. Anybody who likes The Devil in the White City should read this, because it's also like that book is another book that's about a crime mainly, but also about so much more and so much of like the historical context of the crime. So yeah, if you like Devil in the White City and you like libraries, you should read The Library Book by Susan Orlean. Okay, up next, Sourdough by Robin Sloan. I love this book. I have read Robin Sloan's other book, Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, and this was very similar in that it takes place in like Bay Area tech industry, somebody who's working in tech and then connects to some very low-tech art form, in this case sourdough bread. And then there's a journey of like this tech person and the low-tech hobby obsession growing, and just like a light magical realism happening. This book is about what happens if you were to approach sourdough bread baking, which is like a very hands-on, like personal, like a human process, like a human activity. And if you were to try to computerize that, but also if it was a little bit magic. That's what this book is about. It was beautiful. It was so fun to read. It made me want to bake bread. I want to read it again for the first time. There's a guy just running back and forth outside my window. Not a guy I know. Okay, so now we are going to talk about Patti Smith. M Train by Patti Smith, I read this year. Last year I read Just Kids by Patti Smith, and I loved that. And I was hyped to read M Train, and it was so good. It was not better. You must read both. And you should read Just Kids first, I think. But M Train just was so, I don't know, Patty's an amazing writer. We know that. But it was really fun to get to know her adult self, because Just Kids, I think, is mostly about her like younger self. So to learn about her even more as a person, as a more complete person, I just feel like this book painted such a complete portrait to me of Patti. And like, she loves detective novels like me, and she's obsessed with The Killing, this one like crime show, and she loses things all the time, and she's always looking for like the perfect cup of coffee, and she visits the graves of dead poets all the time and brings them little gifts, and she'll say yes to anything. This book is told in vignettes, and they're all over the place, and they just, I don't know, all capture like a sort of a different part of her personality, her philosophy on life, which seems to be just do it. I don't know. Her writing and the way that she comes off in her writing, I don't want to get caught up in believing that the way that she has written herself is exactly who she is, but the way that she writes herself is such a cool person, such like somebody that I would love to know, love to chat with. She's modest, she's forgetful, she's weird, she's obsessed with detectives, she's obsessed with Murakami, she's like in a secret geological society with 25 other people or something. She's has a cameo on The Killing because she loves it so much. Like, what a gal. What a gal. Okay, up next on my top 5 of 2020 list is The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery. This is a book that my partner had been trying to get me to read for almost a year, and I kept prioritizing other books over this. It's no excuse because this book was amazing. Where to begin? I'm afraid of the ocean. That said, this book did make me want to learn to scuba dive, which we'll see. Because, can you imagine? You can't. This book is written from the author's perspective. It's a fairly narrative tale about her experience with octopuses. This book is her telling the story of her friendships with these other octopus lovers and these octopus that she met and loved. There are a few octopuses that are living at the aquarium during the course of time that she was writing this book, and she interacts with them, and she also explores like biology and the science of the octopus and what goes on in their brain. They don't really have one. They are the brain. I'm not doing this book justice, and I'm sorry. If you were to try to come up with an animal, like you're making up a magical creature, you would not come up with an octopus. And the way that they evolved in just like such a completely different direction from our own, and yet there are still so many ways that we can connect with them and that they connect with us, and they, you know, have emotional intelligence, which that's something that very few people will believe that an aquatic animal has. It's beautiful. Magical. I love them. And I'm gonna read more octopus books in the coming months. Okay, finally, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I read this over the summer and loved it. I don't know how to explain it other than like the basics, which are that this is a generational saga following a family from their origins in South Korea under Japanese rule through their flight to Japan, searching for a better life, and ultimately finding one, but fighting through so much intense discrimination and second-class citizenship, and all of the traditional family book emotions of joy, heartbreak, loss. But mostly for me, this was really eye-opening to the kinds of racism and discrimination that go on in countries other than my own. I really didn't know about what happened to the Koreans under this Japanese rule and how long it lasted and how long I'm sure its effects are still felt today, and just, God, the heartbreak. But really a beautiful story. There's no way that I've done this justice, but I must just read it, okay? Read it. Okay, those are the 5 books that I read this year that I thought were the best, in no particular order. But none of them were written in 2020. They were written in 2015, 2017, and 2018. So then I was like, well, what are the 5 best books that I read this year that were published this year? And it turns out I only read 11 books in 2020 that were published in 2020. And when I was looking at those books, I honestly couldn't pick a top 5. I picked a top 4. And these were very easy to put into order. So I'm going to be quicker about this. Number 4, Weather by Jenny O'Phil. This was a pretty short book. And probably not for everyone, but it's so short that you may as well give it a go. It's about, I don't know, family, mental health, crisis, and libraries. And it's written in a way, it's not like a traditionally narrative kind of book. To me it felt like the little installations of story were like from a phone note. And I don't know how to elaborate on that. But yeah, great book. In the number 3 slot is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is my first Riley Sager book. And I will be back for more, but not that much more. Anyway, Home Before Dark, yeah, I thought it was like a good haunted house take. I liked the concept. I liked the writing. Sometimes it was a little much. But overall, yeah, great book. Number 2 slot, we have Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This book was really good and really weird. I don't feel like I can explain what it's about. I'm gonna try, but it's so much more than what I'm about to say. We have a narrator who might be named Piranesi, is living in a vast house with halls, vestibules, stairs, etc. And the lower halls are filled with a sea. The upper halls, you know, have clouds and rain and birds. And all of the halls are filled with statues, just like white marble statues of all kinds of things. And the most interesting part of the book for me was the descriptions of the statues. The images that the descriptions of the halls evoked was gorgeous to me. And so the story is about our main character. He lives here. The only other person in the halls with him in the house is somebody he calls the other, and they're like working on a project. But then like things start to happen. And that's honestly all I'm gonna say, because the rest of it, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Okay, and the number 1 book for me that I read in 2020, that was published in 2020, is At the Center of All Beauty, Solitude and the Creative Life by Fenton Johnson. This book was good. This book was lovely, really. That's the word I want to use. Fenton writes about, I don't know, a dozen or so celebrated creatives, artists of some kind, and their solitary life and how their solitude influenced their work. And I think in some ways it's an argument for solitude. Solitude meaning not full isolation, but not dedicating your life to another person. He is arguing that because these people didn't dedicate themselves to a spouse, a partner, or children, they were able to dedicate their lives to art instead, and potentially to everyone who will see that art. So it's just a different way of connecting with the world. And yeah, it was beautifully written and really heartwarming to think about ways that you can live that are not like the prescribed way to live. It was great. It was really nice. So that's it. Those are 9 books that I read in 2020 that I really liked. Yeah, leave a comment below if you read any of these and loved them or hated them. I'm equally interested in both reactions. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with something else later.